We're going to get started we're going to start a meeting here. This is the Erie Historic Review Commission meeting. Today is November 4th. Well, it's going quickly. I'm always saying that, but it's amazing. We'll have the roll call, and we'll start out with Jean Craig Pepper.
Thanks.
She's here. Dave Brennan, I'm here. Mark Tannenbaum.
Here.
Melinda Meyer.
Here.
And Matthew Falcone.
Here.
Is Jason Wazorek on the call?
Doesn't look like it.
No? Okay. Absent. Okay. Well, the first item on our agenda is the public comment. So if there's anyone here to speak, you're welcome to come to the podium.
Hello, everyone. Hello, audience. I just want to say congratulations on the existence of the Historic Review Commission. It's a long time coming, and for those of you who are working so hard to make it happen, I really want to say great applause, really wonderful. I remember it's about 20 years now that we started Civitas Erie, and that group in turn brought together a number of different leaders, and I've made a list of some of them: John Vanko, John Claridge, the historian, Chris Mazak, Michael Batal, landscape architect, Sue Moyer, community leader, and others together to try to create some kind of preservation effort in the community. And that is today Preservation Erie. I'm not involved with it any longer, but it's still an important force for us. I wanted to also say that I wanted to hand out actually something. Next month will be a number of people from the St. Andrew Parish will be presenting at the St. Andrew site, and in anticipation of that, I just wanted to hand out a little card inviting you to a Christmas concert that's open to anyone. You don't have to be religious even. If you just want to get in the Christmas spirit, we encourage you to come on Sunday, December 8th at 1 p.m. to enjoy this concert. So shall I leave these with you?
Oh, that's
All right. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there anyone else here for public comment? Okay. And there's no one online, or, we're not doing anyone online, so I'm just asking the question. I don't think we have anyone online.
I love this. I love this. Okay. Is it going to be big poster all over the place?
So that, no, okay, great. Okay, there's no one online, so we will go to the next item on our agenda, is the approval of the past meeting minutes. We had two sets of meeting minutes from our regular meetings, September 9th, 2024, and October 7th. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from these two dates?
We'll do it one at a time. I move that we approve our meeting minutes from September 9th, 2024.
Okay, we'll do one at a time. So there's a motion to approve the September 9th. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second, Jean. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and the motion passes.
And I'll move that we approve our minutes from October the 7th, 2024.
Okay, October 7th, a motion's been made to approve the meeting minutes. Do we have a second for the meeting minutes?
I'll second that.
Second, Mark. Okay. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and the motion passes for both meeting minutes. Okay. We'll move on to the next item, which is old business. And we've had a request and we've had discussion about a study session on Monday, December 2nd, 11:30 to 12:30, to discuss the downtown design guidelines and its application to the HRC, the City of Erie. And there was a link to that document. And Heather, were you going to say a few words about that, or is there anything we need to discuss before we have a motion to approve that meeting?
So I've been in touch with the potential partner on this, so Erie Downtown Partnership, with Emily Fetco on this, and it looks like she may be at that meeting in December at our special study session as sort of the main contact representing Erie Downtown Partnerships. So I don't have anything other than please look at the document ahead of time, ahead of the special study session. Bring a lunch as needed that day because it will be a working lunch, or eat ahead of time. So it'll be in that 11:30 to 12:30 slot, just prior to the regular monthly HRC meeting at 1 on Monday, December 2nd. And I'm also going to note that last Tuesday, when the state visited on October 29th and staff met with the State Historic Preservation Office, that they also requested to be present at this meeting as well. So I don't know if they'll be here virtually or in person, but I think those are all good signs. So, and I hope that everyone can attend.
Where are we going to eat, here or in your office?
We can, as long as the planning conference room is open, maybe that's the best place. And if it is booked, I haven't looked that far out yet, we can meet down here alternatively.
So we would just ask to get you when we came in?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll come down. I'll meet everyone in the lobby at 11:30 on that day.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's really all I have for it.
Any other questions or comments about that meeting?
And we should bring a lunch.
Yes.
So then I move that we hold a special study session on Monday, December 2nd, from 11:30 to 12:30, specifically about the downtown design guidelines and its application for the HRC and City of Erie.
Okay, do we have a second for the motion?
I'll second it.
Second, Jean, okay. Those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and the motion passes. Okay. Next item is the new business, and the first item on that is item A, the overview of the state visit on Tuesday, October 29th. And Heather, you're going to talk about that visit?
Yeah, that would be great. Just writing myself a note. Bill Callahan and Elizabeth Rarick came to visit last Tuesday. I met with them about 4 or 5 hours in total. Melinda Meyer was present on behalf of the HRC that day, which was great. And Melinda attended during, I guess, the lunch from 12 to 1 o'clock. A few major points of, clarification or information based on that level of input and dialogue that we received as a department, was the recommendation from the state for the city as a CLG, as a certified local government, to apply for forthcoming CLG grants and not necessarily rely upon keystones for any future phases of the citywide historic resources survey. So for instance, as it currently stands, the citywide historic resources survey project, the one that we're currently within, is funded 3 different ways. The CLG that we applied and obtained and are using for phase 1 are strictly for outreach and engagement for this particular project. That's the way it's been structured. And the keystones are intended and allocated for the field-based survey portions. The 2 keystones, are also larger amounts of money. In discussion with the state, they thought it made the most sense for us to apply for CLGs and ask for larger amounts in the future for future phases, such that it's an ongoing request for any remaining areas of the city that don't get surveyed in this first part of the citywide historic resources survey.
So this is all for the survey?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And so that was a little bit of a realignment from what we as staff were thinking. And so we really welcomed that information and that recommendation from them. A second item that they had pertained to design guidelines, and that's where Bill Callahan had requested that he be present at the meeting, the special study session next month for the downtown design guidelines, so that he could talk about its application, what it has, as well as its limitations. And I know that he's seen other local jurisdictions, such as the city of Titusville. He's seen that document come to fruition and can really speak to how well that was put together and how well it's being used. So that was really great to have that level of support from Bill Callahan. A third item was the state had requested information as to just the status of where the city is with the citywide historic resources survey. So it was a nice time to give them an update, to talk about how the Hagen History Center has been so welcoming of us to set up a table and to program the Mapping Our History Days there. And so they gave us some really great ideas, aligning with what other cities are doing or have done throughout Pennsylvania as well. So that was really great to hear. And they're super supportive of things. They also said congratulations to the City of Erie for receiving the Pennsylvania American Planning Association State Award for Plans for the Historic Preservation Plan. So we were awarded that back in early October, which was a little bit of a surprise, and we couldn't officially talk about it until the conference occurred. So that was nice to notify the state and to receive that. Congratulations from the state as well. Let's see. There were obviously other things that we talked about in the 4 or 5 hour session that we had. One item of note that will apply or could apply to the HRC, particularly next month, is it was the state's recommendation that based upon certain existing limitations in the zoning ordinance, Article 7, Historic Resources Protection section, it was the state's recommendation that the city and the HRC specifically highly consider pausing future applications that would be processed through the HRC. So I guess as staff member, I think that should be probably discussed today, and there should be, probably a statement and a vote made by the HRC on how we want future nominations to align with the state recommendation. I will also say that I, as staff member for Historic Resources for the city, feel and know that there is work to be done on the Historic Resources Protection section, Article 7 of the zoning ordinance, and it's been slated for November for staff to make time to look at that section and make the appropriate changes, and for staff to then review it with affiliated departments, present it back to the HRC members for review, and then in sequence it would have to be approved by the HRC, approved by city staff, approved by city solicitors, then go to Planning Commission and City Council for vote. So based upon several applications received in general over the past few years, I recommend that the HRC consider pausing or refraining from votes, either or an alternative thereof, starting after today until the Historic Resources Protection section is revised and approved. So sorry to end on a heavier note based upon the state meeting, but that was a big part of what the state discussed last Tuesday, October 29th, and recommended to us as city staff.
So were there markups? I mean, there was like recommendations, and there's a list of those?
The city staff has those, yes, and we'll be
Okay.
looking at those starting this week. And Kathy and I will be working on them together.
Okay.
And there's certain sections that need to be incorporated that are currently not in the ordinance. Yeah. But again, that was just one of the items that
What,
the
have we
state.
been getting lots of applications?
We have.
So,
How many?
Between 1 to 2 each meeting. Some have owner support, some do not. And the ones that don't have owner support really should have owner support.
Okay, so everything we approved before is still going on, right?
Everything that has been approved thus far would continue in its process.
Okay.
It would be after today's meeting, I would anticipate that would make the most sense. We had the state meeting last Tuesday. That's when the state came to visit.
Uh-huh.
In the afternoon is when, that discussion occurred. We did receive an application prior to last Tuesday for the old Customs House that is an Erie Art Museum building, and that is an item on today's new business.
so from my perspective, I'm actually incredibly supportive of this. It's always been my stance that the Historic Preservation Program is in its infancy stage, and we should not feel pressured to designate local resources because the foundations for the program have not yet been created. So when the Historic Preservation Program was created, right, we immediately launched into the development of a citywide historic preservation plan. While work was happening on the citywide historic preservation plan, funding was secured to launch then immediately after that into the citywide historic resource survey, which we knew was going to be a phased survey, or at least there was the potential for the historic resource survey to be phased, right? We also knew that there had the potential to be some issues with the ordinance. Just in previous conversations before that version or iteration of Article 7 had been approved, there were discussions kind of, again, behind the scenes, what some of the shortfalls of the ordinance were. So there was an understanding at some point that either policy development or review and revision of that ordinance would need to be done. I think having 1 or 2 nominations in place allowed us to see the shortfalls of the ordinance as it could be applied and should be applied. So seeing some of the deficiencies in the ordinance as it currently is written. Again, from my perspective, this program is in its infancy. I think we want. I think it makes sense to take the time to build the program right, and take care of some of these foundational projects or initiatives, and then really focus efforts on designation, not just on individual landmarks, but also have conversations with neighborhoods and neighborhood associations about districts that make sense as well, which I think should be, again, approached as a team effort. We've got a lot of organizations, we've got HRC members, we've got a lot of different people who want to make this success, and so we've got the potential to work kind of collaboratively with a lot of different individuals to make that, again, a success when it's time to get there. So that's, again, just one person's opinion, but I think that because the program is still so new, that again, kind of focusing on some of the foundational initiatives is critical, whether that be, again, looking at how best to implement some of the early recommendations or short-term recommendations in the Historic Preservation Plan, continuing with the citywide historic resource survey, again, looking at the development of design guidelines, which are critical when it comes to looking at proposed changes to designated properties. I think all of that work is really important to come first. And quite honestly, I think that development of the citywide survey is an opportunity to engage the public, get people informed about the historic preservation program, use the survey as an educational tool, the development of the survey as an educational tool, an opportunity to engage the community. I think the same is true for the development of design guidelines. We can also use that as a community education and engagement tool. Again, the development of those pieces. So in all of that work, we're building kind of support. We have the opportunity to build support citywide for the historic preservation and ultimately for the historic preservation program and ultimately the designation of resources. So again, just one person's opinion, but I actually am in full support of the SHPO's recommendation.
Well, how long would this postponement be?
Well, may I suggest, out of respect to those attending in the audience today for other business, that
sorry.
we move forward on the agenda and come back to this item after we've completed the new business that's been posted.
Okay.
Okay. We'll come back to this item, we'll move forward, and we'll come back. B is the next item, the new business is the Historic Review nomination application for the Old Customs House building at the Erie Art Museum.
Good afternoon. Thank you for
afternoon.
having us here. My name's Melanie Vadzemniks. I'm the Development Director at the Erie Art Museum. In regards to the conversation you just had, if you feel that you need to table this, I would understand, but I'm here and ready to present, so if you'd like to go through the application that we completed, I'd be happy to do so.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, thanks so much. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Old Customs House. The Old Customs House is the name as it is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. We tend to refer to it as the Customs House, but that official name on the National Register is the Old Customs House, and so that's what I use through the application process. Began in 1980, well, the museum, the Erie Art Museum, began in 1898 as the Erie Art Club in the basement of the beautiful library over here on the corner. That's where Joseph Plavkin would go and take his art classes in the basement and really began his own love affair with art. And so then the Art Museum moved a couple of times in the early 1900s. And in 1983, landed in the Old Customs House. So when my own children were little, I would take them to the Customs House, and that was the museum. So, the first floor with the main large gallery, and then the two other ones on the back, and then what was downstairs. And That was the museum, and we loved it. And then, of course, the big addition was built in 2010, and the Customs House continues to be a very vital part of the Erie Art Museum. We use it as gallery space, we use it for educational programs, we use it for special programs and special events, and we use it for community gatherings, including the city of Erie when it's Celebrate Erie time, which is great fun. So we were asked to relate to 3 things on the application. And the first one that I looked at was the association with an event that is significant to the history of the municipality, Commonwealth, or nation. And I think that the Customs House meets all 3 of those in terms of the significance to the history. So, you know, it was built in 1839, and it was built to be the United States, a branch of the United States Bank of Philadelphia. And that all started with Andrew Jackson saying, hey, wait a minute, we shouldn't have one centralized banking program in the United States. We should have these individual branches where the government can put some of their resources into different lending institutions. And it became known as the Bank War, and it was a big part of the 1832 presidential campaign. So Jackson, of course, won. Whether that's good or bad, I'll leave it up to everybody else. But it did essentially change the way that banking was held, but it was also the precursor for many, many years later for us to have the Federal Reserve. So I think that's really that important link there. The bank did not survive. The building opened in 1839, and I think by 1841, that bank was no longer in business. So it was a bank for a very, very short amount of time. And then it became, and this is where we're going to move on a little bit. So then it became the, let's see, sorry, I'm skipping ahead. So it was the Erie branch of the United States Bank of Pennsylvania, which was headquartered in Philadelphia, folded just a year after it opened, and then in 1849, the United States government purchased the building. So it already had, in its very infancy, about an 8-year period of being an unused building. It was just sitting there, brand new. And then it became it became a customs house, and the basement was used for a bonded warehouse. And so that, of course, relates directly to Erie as a port. And then it became a post office, and then when the post office moved out in 1867, the building was once again empty for 41 years. Which is a really long time, 42 years actually. And then the Grand Army of the Republic, which was really one of the first veterans organizations for people who had served in different branches of the military. The Grand Army of the Republic was made a custodian of the building, and so for 23 years they used it as a meeting place, and I sure wish we could go back and hear some of the stories that were told and things that people talked about during that time period. And then it became the Erie County Historical Society, and they were housed there for 51 years. And again, the stories, the linkages to Erie and the things that happened throughout the city and the development of the city all happened within the walls of this building. Today, in 1983, the Erie Art Museum acquired the building, and we've been housed there ever since. And so we're at 41 years and counting. So the building has gone through quite a bit of different history. But I wanted to back up a little bit in terms of the development of the reasoning for this building to be built in Erie in the first place was because of the population boom in Erie during that time frame in the 1800s, and also its relationship to the Erie Canal. And just that seeing, the Keystone State, we've often been looked at as, the gateway to the West. And Erie definitely was part of that movement of moving goods moving thought processes, moving people to the west. And a lot of people came through Erie for that to happen. So the Erie Canal and the Industrial Revolution and the spread of goods westward was all part of the history of the old Customs House. So then we can get into the third part, and that's the style of the building. And, you know, it's inarguably one of the most recognizable buildings in Erie. We can't tell you how many people use it for their wedding photos, for their prom photos, for, you know, just people coming in from out of town, posting photos online. And so, you know, it's very recognizable. It's a Greek Revival style building. William Kelly, who was a very prominent architect, was the designer of the building. I love this part that it's based on the Thesion in Athens, because that was a temple dedicated to the gods of trade and the arts. And the building has basically been used for trade and the arts for many, many years, and history too. So we've got all of those in there. So, you know, it has the Doric columns that we've all learned about in school way back when. And then I like this quote that I included in the thing. Architectural historian Talbot Hamlin describes the design as vital, sensitive, and archaeologically correct. So it's really a beautiful structure. I love the story of getting the marble from Vermont. It was really one of the first times that U.S. marble was used in construction of a building, and just the feat of getting that marble from Vermont to Erie was quite impressive. And then, of course, the bricks were used from just at the foot of German Street in Erie, where they were manufactured. So local manufacturing, Vermont manufacturing, and, you know, pretty much a pretty nice architectural feat in making all of that happen in the mid-1800s. The ceiling, I'm sure a lot of you have seen this incredible ceiling in the main room, which is now called the Hagen Gallery. It's quite impressive. It's this egg and dart style, and that is an alternating pattern of oval shapes, which are the eggs, and the pointed forms, which are the darts, and it's a common decorative element in Greek architecture. There's cornices, friezes, moldings, all kinds of visual interest in the building. And then there's these repetitive geometric motifs in the ceiling, and they symbolize order, harmony, and infinity, which I love all of that too. So as I said, we've been on the National Register of Historic Places since 1972. We are a historic register site of national significance, which is a really big deal to us, and it was Bill Callahan who helped me figure all of that out. And it was wonderful news to get. You know, as a museum, you know, we've been around a long time. We intend to be around for a long time. We intend for the Customs House to be a part of our history and heritage and the way that we relate to the community for a very long time. We recently had a study done by GBBN, interior and exterior envelope study of the building, to see, you know, how we can make sure that we preserve this building for its future use. As a result of that study, the study itself was part of a Keystone Preservation Planning Grant, and then as a result of that study, we were able to apply for a Keystone Historic Preservation Grant, a construction grant, which we applied for and received the funding. Well, we'll receive the funding once I send them receipts and they send us back the money. You know how that works. We were awarded $100,000 to address mitigation of any water infiltration into the building. So that is our step one, which, you know, Jeff Kidder and Mr. Hagan just did a presentation for Jefferson Educational Society, and Jeff actually said in the presentation the two worst things for any building are humans and water. We are addressing that water infiltration into the building and looking forward to being able to take care of, basically it's coming up through the masonry of the front steps, and then of course a little bit of roof work and the eaves and things like that. So we were awarded $100,000. We've received another $250,000 award from an individual to match that grant because it requires the grant. And we asked for overage because every construction project comes in over what we need. So, sorry. So that's where we are now. Heading after this, we'll be leading into probably a capital campaign that will involve more significant preservation to the Customs House, and part of that planning will also involve a lot of community involvement to talk about the various ways that we can use this building. And so I know you all were talking about these HRC meetings. If you ever want to hold one in the Hagen Gallery in the old Customs House, that would be a lovely place to convene community members and talk about how we can all work together. Thank you all so much for listening.
Molly,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Do you have
Thank you.
questions?
Thank you so much for coming. And is there any questions from any of the members of the board? Questions, comments?
I'm sorry, what is it that you're applying for? Funds?
Oh,
or-
no, the
Oh, the
historic.
designation, I'm sorry. Okay.
Historic
Designation.
designation.
Okay, the
Yes,
designation,
For the local
okay.
landmark designation, I
yes,
think, for the
right,
city of
right.
Aaron. Yes, that's what I'm here for.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any further comments, questions? Good?
I have several comments. Erie Art Museum, you did a wonderful job on this nomination. I know it's not easy to put together. It's a bit bureaucratic by nature, but it was excellent that you were able to not only talk about the significance of the architecture, but the social and economic history that's tied into this building as well.
Can I add my postscript about this particular picture?
Sure.
Because I didn't talk about it, but we're gonna come all the way back around to Andrew Jackson, because I didn't know this connection until I did the research for this application. But this statue is John Soak Deckard's Eternal Vigilance. A lot of people know it, some people love it, some people don't. He wore the glasses during the eclipse. He sometimes is wearing coats and has hats and scarves and, you know, all kinds of things. But Andrew Jackson said, "But you must remember, my fellow citizens, eternal vigilance by the people is the price of liberty, and that you must pay the price if you want to secure the blessing." And so John Soak Deckard did his homework, and he knew that all of this history about Andrew Jackson and the building of the old Customs House. And he used this quote in titling his
Is that why it's named
sculpture.
that?
It's-
Is that why it's named that?
Yes.
That's great.
That's astounding.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I had no idea either until about a week and a half ago.
I have an early drawing of that
Cool.
at my house.
You might have to show it to us. Thanks, Mark.
Well, and thank you too for being such good stewards of the public good. You mentioned that this is a building that has national significance, and it may well be the only one in Erie that does. And thank you to the Art Museum for all that you've done these past 40-some years to take care of such a treasure. I don't think that in reading the nomination, it was lost on any of us that the building has always held things that were of value to the people of Erie. And that changed over the years from gold ingots to pieces of art. But it's wonderful that you have brought this before us. And thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So do we want to, does anyone want to make a motion? Or do we
I
wanna
think we
vote?
need to make two, yeah. The first motion then is that we formally accept
Accept it.
the nomination of the old Customs House. And so on that, I so move.
Okay.
Is there
I'll
a
second.
second? There's a second. Jane, second. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it.
And the second motion then is that we then make a positive recommendation to City Council and to the Planning Commission for the listing of the old Customs House on Erie's Register of Historic Places.
Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second that one.
Mark seconds it. Those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and the motion passes.
Congratulations.
Today's the 4th. Okay. Great, thank you, everybody. Let's move on to the next item, is the CHRS designation for the Historic Review Survey. And Heather, did you want to talk about, I know there's flyers up here that are available for handing out. Did you want to talk about that, everything available?
Sure. So this will be quick. Just wanted to give the opportunity for discussion for HRC commissioners, and if anyone from the public is in attendance. So there are some flyers being passed around. I know there are some bigger sizes, about 11 by 17, and smaller 8.5 by 11 size flyers for the historic citywide historic resources survey. You may see those flyers posted downtown and throughout the city's 17 planning areas. Don't be surprised. The planning and community neighborhood intern and I will be driving those around the city next week and this week. And the project website is up. The online story map is posted and live. So please be an advocate for what we are doing. Post it in your building or your place of work, wherever you feel it might be appropriate to do so. Have those conversations with your neighbors, have those conversations with your friends and family, and maybe even have those difficult conversations with those who might not understand or might not support preservation. The third part just of this discussion or overview is that because the Hagen History Center has accepted our inquiry for the Mapping Our History events, they've given us 3 or 4 different dates to set up a table and bring city allocated laptops and iPads. I'll be there to walk the public through the online story mapping component. And so if anyone from the public would like help navigating the site, or would like to record an audio story of something that's historical that might be, spoken and not visually based, that's a great opportunity to do so. And so that first event at the Hagen will be this Sunday, which I think is November 10th or 11th, but it's this Sunday from 12 to 5. So we'll have flyers, we'll have the story map up and running, and we'll be there at the Hagen answering any questions. And they have been a wonderful supplier of information for EDR, our consultant, as well as for us, as we're learning more ourselves about some of the different and unique aspects of our history. So, and one last thing, the EDR team will be starting downtown next week on Monday or Tuesday. So they will be field surveying the downtown section of the city first, followed by West Bayfront, and then 12th Street corridor, and then Little Italy. And then they're jumping up to Bayfront, Pulaski Lighthouse, East Bayfront, and Trinity Park. I think in that order, if I called out 8 different planning areas. So we thought that downtown would make sense since it has the most visibility. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Heather, for the update.
Absolutely.
Is there any commission, any questions from the commission? Okay. Seeing none, do we want to go back up to the state visit, which we kind of move forward to the nomination? Is there any further discussion about the state visit?
Not from staff.
No.
Not from me. Do you want to speak to anything?
Good afternoon. I'm Jason Check, one of the city's solicitors. So, and this is just to add on to what was already discussed previously. There's brought to our attention that part of Article 7 needs revised, and I would say from a legal point of view, it definitely needs revised. There is some inconsistencies. The inconsistencies by themselves can't be overcome by just simply kind of redrafting it or kind of a different interpretation. But one of the flaws in both the bylaws and the ordinance, because a lot of the language is extremely similar, is that it doesn't look like when an application is submitted that the property owner is getting notice. And really, it doesn't look like the property owner has to get any notice for an application to be submitted. And then the time frame for providing notice is after there's already been a vote. If you're just a property, if you're in a district, they give you 7 days. Those timeframes are just too short, or the ones that are non-existent. So with the revision, that would be to streamline the process, make sure the property owner has some sort of say-so, or at least knows that there's going to be a meeting or something's going to be voted upon. And then that way, everyone's kind of at the same page of the book and no one's starting behind. So from a legal point of view, I think notice to what's happening or could be happening to someone's property is extremely important. So those are the things that they would be focusing on. So the planning office and Heather have been very good at talking to us and saying, what's the problems? We all agree that this is what needs revised. So I really would think that once they start working on it, the revisions probably can move, I'm going to say quickly, but not, within a proper procedure. So because of that, though, it probably is good to table applications for the time being with the thought process of working on this full steam ahead, get it revised, get it sent through the proper channels, procedure, get it approved, and then once you guys open it up, it'll be fine procedurally. That way the city won't have any worries about someone being angry, taking their anger out on the city perhaps. So.
Well, like this one we just approved, I mean, the organization is all on board with.
Right, but it comes without naming names or specifics. There have been organizations or properties, I should say there have been properties that are been applied for where the organization or the property owner had no notice. And then all of a sudden, the bylaws have a mandate that you guys have to act within 30 days at the next public meeting. Well, that's too short a time frame. And what if someone's out of town or sick or doesn't live in town anymore? Then all of a sudden, they may have a nice, old property or house that is historically significant. But again, you can't just.
I understand
Yeah,
that.
so that's the problem.
I just thought that this particular situation really wouldn't apply, right?
No, but
Yeah.
we've gotten enough phone calls from people
From
who are getting.
other people,
Yeah, who are
I
angry, that
understand
it's like,
that.
so it's like, okay, this has happened several times in the last couple of months. And it's like, wait a minute, this shouldn't be happening. It's historic review. We shouldn't be making people angry. And then once this process is streamlined and clear, I think you guys will be good to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my question for you is that in reading Article 7, it doesn't look like we have the authority to do that, or at least what was suggested by staff, to not accept nominations.
The solicitor's office is recommending strongly that you stop doing that. So
I understand
So,
that, but do we
yeah.
have the authority to do it?
you do. You have the authority not to follow it. But
Can
the other
you-
thing that, wait, hold on. The other thing too is part of the ordinance section, ordinance was renumbered a little bit, but it's the same language in the old book. 701.5, I think it's 701E maybe in the old book, talks about establishing a clear process in which proposed changes go through. So when I look at these, I don't think the process is very clear. So I think part of, tabling nominations and applications to clean up the process, which is kind of what we're suggesting. The other thing that you can cite out is the bylaws specifically talk about, now this is in part of your bylaws, section B, I'm sorry, capital D, small b, IV, so number 4. There's information that should be included as part of the application. It's encouraged. Doesn't say it mandatory, but it's encouraged. Is what would be the impact on the property owner? And none of the applications, if you're not contacting the property owner directly, you can't know what the impact is going to be on the property owner. So there's a contradiction there, I think, even in the bylaws and the application. So the application could be filed by anybody, like a neighbor or, whatever. But then you actually specify as part of the application, we want to know the impact on the property owner. Well, that's a contradiction. So again, that's not a clear process. So those are two spots that I would cite that need clarified.
I understand that.
Yeah, so
The question that I have, though, is where does it state that we as a commission have the authority to stop accepting nominations?
you have the authority. If there's not a clear process, then it's up to the authority to make sure the process is clear.
Well, I mean,
That's a contradiction.
how long is this postponement going to take? I mean, aren't we going to get this done in a matter of a month or so?
That would be my question, is how long?
In theory, so once the ordinance goes under the rewrite between Kathy and I and reviewed by Jake Welsh and Solicitor's Office and Jackie and HRC again, in the state, that's, 5 or 6 entities as a whole. Then, once it has that, and we look at it, then it goes to Planning Commission and Council. So it could be 3 or 4 months. I would think 2 or 3 reasonably. I would think probably
Okay.
by January, but we know how January can be.
It concerns me greatly because these are issues that we flagged earlier this year in the spring, and we have yet to act on this. So it does concern me that our actions now will not be readily resolved in time to continue this program. So I really would like some sort of clear timeline put before us of how long we can table nominations for until when we can start accepting them again.
Well, that's going to be worked on. Like I said, the issues have already been flagged, like as you
Yes.
said. The problem is that's getting to a point where it's becoming a consistent issue. And you guys want to help the community. You're not out there to make more people angry or that don't want to work with the commission. So, and legally, the liability is rising. People aren't getting notice. There's not even notice. If you have an individual home, there's not even provision that you get notice until after the vote. That's not proper.
I want to interject as staff person. So as staff, even though I'm not required, according to Article 7 in its current state, though I'm not required to give owners notice, I've given owners notice. So I have copies of letters I've sent to the Erie Art Museum, other applicants in recent months. So even though it doesn't require it, I do give notice. However, there has been certain situations for the city and for staff, and situations plural, more than one now, where an owner has disapproved of their property being nominated locally. And it was a state recommendation at the highest level for us to incorporate into a rewrite of the zoning ordinance, Section 7, for owner approval of all, not just district. So I just want to clarify those two things. Might it be that we can continue to accept applications, but not vote on them and still comply with the days set forth in the ordinance as it is?
You can accept applications, but you're going to need to table them, and I think you're going to need to kick them out.
But there's a certain
A couple,
time period on
yes.
them that would
Existing.
expire, so maybe that
Yeah.
wouldn't be the right thing to do.
So
Exactly that.
So it really is easier for you to not take new applications. Because a lot of the rules say within 30 days, blah, 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 blah. That's a really tight timeline.
It
When
is.
a
Yes, it
person
is.
has 5 days notice or 3 days, even if you're calling them politely and saying, hey, by the way, and we're having a meeting in 3 or 4 or 5 days. okay,
We're
that's-
aware, but
Yeah.
we're aware because we flagged these issues
Yeah,
at the
that's what I
beginning
mean.
of this year.
So, I mean-
That's the concern here is not not understanding what you're raising. The concern is how quickly can we move forward through this process, given that we've already identified what the issues were. So
Kathy and I are meeting on Thursday, and that's been on our calendar for a few weeks. The Citywide Historic Resources Survey was priority 1 for all of us. And that was because our first grant expires this December. Staff can only do so much as one staff member for the entire city of Erie. So I do want to articulate that, but not use that as a full crutch in so much as this is the next priority for staff.
Are we good and up to speed with all the ones that we've given before?
applications or
Right. and
Grants?
You were saying that the funds go away at a certain point?
yes, we are current, and that's why the Citywide Historic Resources Survey and the outreach and the public engagement parts of it have taken full priority. Now that was at the mayor's conference 3 or 4 weeks ago, and the field team is starting next Monday, that's why this Article 7 is on staff's agenda for November, for this Thursday, for she and I to have our first conversation on it. I don't think it will take a long time, but I also can't project how much more state input or solicitor's office input or zoning department input it might require. So I do hear your concern, and as a new staff member that joined the city 7 months ago in March, I do feel that it should have been addressed earlier, but we are looking at it. We have had the meetings about it. I do hear you.
And just so you know, the solicitor's office, as soon as they have something ready that they want us to review or type up, this is on one of our issues too. This isn't something I want to kick the can to like next June. That's not what I'm,
Well, and
just so you know.
thinking about our own schedule, I know that we, just this meeting, signed up for, or set aside some time in December for guidelines, but it very much seems like this is a priority. So do we need to?
Well, maybe we need a work session sooner.
Well, that's my, I guess, question to staff and to the city solicitor. Our input presumably would be helpful to this process. So is this something that we can assist with either in a working session next month or as part of our routine meeting?
In my opinion, the only thing that really needs fixed are the notification parts of it and the timeline parts of it. So it
And-
applies evenly to all applications.
Yeah, from solicitors. This
So
week, you-
if you clean up all the notification issues and the timeline issues, so everyone's like kind of on the same level ground, the solicitor probably would be okay with it.
So Jason, if we can get those recommendations from
Can you
you, then
tell
I
us
think
what
we
it is you'd like to see?
meet as soon as possible to kind of review those. And I think that's what you were saying, Matthew, is let's get the information, let's look at it immediately
Yeah.
and not push it off. So,
Yeah.
So like when they meet on Thursday and then just kind of roll from there.
So I would actually like to see it after the SHPO has weighed in on it. I don't know that there's. I would prefer to see a version that has been reviewed and incorporates the recommendations of the solicitor's office as well as the input of the State Historic Preservation Office. So, but again, that's just my perspective. I think it would be better to look at a document that includes feedback from both of those as opposed to any earlier.
will they be getting those to us soon then, Melinda? That's what you're saying? They're still looking at it then?
So I think that's the State Historic Preservation Office's timeline. But honestly, I also don't know if we are looking at a 3 to 4 month window. I don't know that necessarily causes us any harm either. We're looking at coming up to the holidays. We've got November, December, January and February are usually quiet months. So even if worst case scenario, we're looking at February or March, does that necessarily harm us? Because we're going to be, again, focused on getting the Citywide Historic Resource Survey completed. And I would hope that I would hope and or advocate for the HRC to have at least one opportunity to engage with EDR regarding the progress of their activities. But in any case, I don't know that harms us, and if it gets us on the right track, I think it's worth waiting for. And I'm so sorry, I did not get your name for the minutes.
No, Jason Check, Checque. Looks like Chaku. Does.
And I do want to clarify, when I said 3 or 4 months, our final version of a revised ordinance, sections, Article 7, must go through planning and city councils. And so that's where that whole timeline at a worst-case scenario, it might be something like that, right? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
what gobbles up most of the time.
So, knowing that the holidays are between here and there, that's where we're at.
But realistically, we wouldn't be able to move on Article
Without
7
the historic
without it
resources
being-
survey.
Mhm. Well, no,
or
I was going to say
city-
without it being approved by city council.
Exactly.
We cannot implement
Exactly.
a revised Article 7 without ultimately the planning commission and city council
We should
adopting
get
it.
sooner rather than later to them, if they're the slow cause.
Right, yes.
And they are.
Yes, yes.
Best way possible. But we should get, I mean, honestly, I think we should be able to get to them in 30 days, 60 days. It doesn't sound like it's a gigantic revision.
In my opinion, it's not. It's just a matter of getting the
It's a-
language right
you're
and
talking
lined
about
up.
Timeline, I mean,
So,
honestly, that could be done in a day.
Probably. Just means just get it in front of you guys, and then get it in front of the planning commission, and then get it in front of city
I mean, if it
council
came back to
for
us
2
by the
readings.
next meeting, we could vote on that, and it could become city council by the next meeting for that.
Well, the planning commission, and then maybe by
again-
January will be the soonest, I think, for city council.
Don't forget to factor in the review and responses from the State Historic Preservation Office.
I understand.
And other related departments too. But
Yes,
staff will
yes.
do everything that
Well,
staff
I mean,
can to
maybe we
facilitate
could
that
call them all
input
and
too.
say, gee, this is sort of,
That's still-
a priority. Can you please do it quicker than normal? I mean,
I think it'll be okay. I really do.
I do too.
I really think it'll be okay.
It's a good, it's a good thing. Right, this is the positive for the program.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for bringing us up to date on these issues, and we're, as you can all tell, we're anxious to resolve it and get through this
And just so you
effectively.
know, I was a history major in college, and so I probably know way too much history for a person who enjoyed history. So I like, a little commission like this, you guys are doing nice work, and you want to keep it going. But unfortunately, the lawyer side of me is just like, let's stop, rearrange some stuff, some language, and get it revised, and then go from there. But no problem.
you're not
Thank
asking
you. I
anything
appreciate it.
unreasonable. We just need to have this rock-solid time frame,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, there's a little bit of liability that's, worried about,
I can understand.
and so.
Thank you,
liability,
Jason.
just,
Yep,
Thank you.
thank you so much. Any final comments on that? Okay,
Not on that.
would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
No, I would make a motion to address the issue on the floor.
Oh, okay.
Before we do, though. So I move, well, before that, a question. We now have 2 nominations that are currently working their way through the system. We have the one for the Old Customs House that was just accepted, and we also have one for the
Erie Day
Erie Day School.
Erie Day School is going to this month's planning commission meeting. Last month, they did not meet quorum.
Okay.
So yes, the Erie Day School is in the process.
Okay.
And Jake Welsh is aware, I did check with him last week, and it will be at next week's planning commission meeting, and then subsequently may or may not go to council, yes.
Okay. Good to know.
So, yes,
Thank
and
you.
then with Erie Art Museum just being voted and approved here, it will go to planning commission next within 30 days to Jake.
It's excellent timing for the Erie Art Museum. So with that, then, I move that we place a moratorium on accepting new nominations until such time that revisions to Article 7 can be presented to the HRC.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second, Jean? Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it, motion passes.
With that, I then move we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. We're adjourned. Thank you.